We've got balance changes that are set for several weeks. Since Mythic is the largest rarity, I'm ranking every single Mythic Brawler from worst to best to help you all decide who to unlock, upgrade, and push next. Starting off our list is our one and only F tier graded Brawler, and F tier grade means you're one of the worst Brawlers in the game and very difficult to win with consistently. So it brings me no joy to announce that number 27 is one of my favorite characters in the game, Doug. Outside of grassy maps where you're up close to your opponents, he's rendered pretty useless, and most players are smart enough just to stay away from him, not engage up close, keep the distance, and chip away at him. Hopefully there are better days ahead for the immortal hot dog. Next up, we've got the D tier graded Brawlers, which should all be considered below average Brawlers. Starting off this section is number 26, Miko, who I don't think is in the best spot right now. I just don't feel like he has a lot of use cases, and as an assassin, there are other better ones in the game, like Mortis, who have recently gotten buffs, hypercharges, etc. He's a thrower counter, but there are still better ones out there. Number 25 is going to be the anti-tank brawler, Charlie, but I feel like there are a lot of better anti-tank brawlers out there. It takes her a long time to charge up that super, get herself a hypercharge, and really pop out. She has some spawners, but Gale, Chester, Surge, etc. all rip through tanks a lot faster than her. Number 24 is going to be Janet, who I'm going to give a little bit more love to compared to past tier lists, but just a little bit. She's had some good use cases at a professional level. A handful of times I've seen her in scrims, so pros are considering her, but very infrequently, and I think pros are going to be able to utilize her a lot better than casuals at a 3v3 level. Next up is a fan favorite. Number 23 is going to be Fang. Keep in mind, this is a 3v3 list, not a showdown, not a 5v5 list. If you want to take him in those game modes, I think it's fine, but in 3v3, there are a lot of better tanks and assassins in the game out there. He's gotten no recent buffs or any bump. At lower tier levels and trophies, he can pop off because of his team wipe potential, and obviously you can ricochet off opponents quickly, but if you expand throughout the game, he fades out pretty quickly. Number 22 is going to be Mr. P, who just doesn't have the DPS to hang right now. Spawners help into sharpshooters, but outside of that, he's not the best, and I think there's other brawlers with spawners that I would prefer over him. And our final brawler in the D tier is going to be number 21, Lou, who has a good hypercharge, but outside of that, I don't think it's the easiest to play him right now. He can work on things like Hot Zone, but even though that used to be his best game mode, I feel like there are other brawlers I would prefer, and there aren't a lot of draft situations that I would really think to take him first. Now on to our C tier graded brawlers, and these brawlers are in play and have situations where they can be drafted. As for ladder, they've got some legit viability, but are mostly average brawlers. Starting us off at number 20 is going to be Colonel Ruffs. Colonel Ruffs is not played a lot, but he definitely has a little viability. I think he's in this average brawler category. Casuals like myself aren't gonna be able to bring out the most of him like a pro is, but his super can help your teammates, and I think he can fit in a lot of maps where Rico might do well in. Number 19 is a brawler I keep dropping throughout these tier lists, and that is going to be Chuck. He's good on heist. Maybe you can get a cheeky performance at a hot zone for him, but even at a pro level, they've really started straying away. He used to be a top dog in game modes like heist, and to the point where he was so good at that mode that I would be forced to put him in something like an A tier, but I don't feel that way anymore, and clearly pros don't either. Number 18 is going to be Tara, and I know that she recently got a hypercharge, and the hypercharge is really good. I just don't think she's necessarily a top tier candidate for a lot of lane matchups. She does have some great maps, so she's certainly in the mix with things like Snake Prairie, but if you're looking at lane brawlers in particular, I don't think she's necessarily some top 5 lane in the game. She's definitely usable. You can definitely get some wins with her, but she is not my primary choice. Next up at number 17, we've got Eve, which I think is a better projectile brawler than Mr. P, who I mentioned earlier. At a pro level, she shows up occasionally on some of these KO and bounty maps with water, since that's one of her unique features. I think more than anything, it's the maps that are kind of keeping her in the mix, not necessarily that she's some phenomenal brawler, so she's slotting in right here at a C tier rating. Number 16 is going to be Sprout, who just feels underwhelming to me right now. He's fine, but I like several other throwers better. Outside maybe KO, he isn't really a top priority or at the top of my mind for drafts. Number 15 is one of my favorite brawlers in the game, and that is Buzz. I feel like right now, though, he's not in his strongest meta. His hypercharge is awesome, it's a ton of fun, and it's very solid, especially on a lot of these more walled brawl ball maps, some of these bushier maps, but at the end of the day, Gale, Mo, Chester, and Surge make his life really rough on ladder right now, and I feel like the only time you can really bring him out in ranked is if he's a sneaky last pick. Number 14 is going to be Willow, who I think is very solid at professional level and underrated at a casual level. I'm not here to tell you that she's some special brawler or some top 5 kind of brawler, but I do think she's a fantastic substitute on a lot of the maps that you would normally lean towards Larry and Lori or Barley. Her super is also a game changer in modes like Brawl Ball to get you extra scores, waste your opponent's ammo, and overall, I just think that Willow should be in your brawler rotation a little bit more. Number 13 and our final C tier graded brawler is going to be Gray, who I'm putting at the tippy top here because he's really solid in KO, has unique features such as his teleport, his walking cane, but I feel like his diversification of maps and modes is pretty limited, especially on ladder where there's lots of tanks and assassins running around. I think it could be overly difficult for Gray to chip down his opponents. Now onto our B tier graded brawlers, who are are all above average on ladder and more frequently great in ranked. Starting us off at number 12 is going to be Otis. Shout out to all you all in the comment section who are always very passionate about Otis. I agree with y'all. I think he's a solid brawler. I don't think he's some A or S tier graded brawler, but I really like his matchup into Daryl in particular, who's one of the better brawlers in the game. And I think as a general lane brawler on a lot of different maps, he's a pretty good shutdown option. Number 11 is going to be Lily, who's a sneaky situational brawler. I love seeing her selected as a late counter in higher drafts, and I think her gadget and access to the Shadow Realm is so unique and valuable in the game. The gadget is largely why she's so good, and I love pulling her out as a final 6 pick on the modifier and ranked where you get unlimited gadgets because her gadget is so darn good. Definitely don't be afraid to play Lily. I think she has some value. I think without that gadget, or if it got reworked, she would be in a different spot, but because she does have it, she's going to be sitting right here at B tier. Number 10 is going to be Melody, who's not as easy as she used to be, and you definitely have to be a little more strategic with her, but I still think she can be great. She's especially good in Heist, where she shreds through the safe and has high mobility with that 3-for-1 super. Great Melody players can put her to work, and in combination with that shield, I think she can bring you a lot of wins. Number 9, and our final B tier brawler is going to be Jean, who I think is very pesky on KO, bounty, and even has a handful of maps like double swooshing, gym grab. Jean just feels like a solid brawler, but not a standout right now. Obviously, the super can win you some big games. You can have some big moments with Jean, but it does take you a while to charge those up, and I do feel like there are a lot of brawlers ahead of him on the totem pole. Now we're on to the big dogs. A tier has above average brawlers that should be consistently played in ladder and ranked. Number 8 is going to be Clancy, who is the number 1 certified pub stomper in the game right now. I don't think he's S tier or anything, but he is an amazing damage dealer and a threat at that tier 3. The hard part, of course, is getting him past that tier 1 and tier 2 stage, where he is a little bit weaker, but reasonably so. So play him a lot like Surge. When you hit that tier 3, he's going to be special. At tiers 2 and 1, not so much. Number 7 is a brawler that was desperate for some love, and I'm so glad that he got it. It is going to be Squeak. The damage buff gave him some serious help. The hypercharge isn't game breaking, but the extra love has helped take him from a bad brawler to a really good one. He's a great one to keep in mind for later picks and drafts, and the only thing I would say is you have to avoid playing him to assassins, which is why sometimes I think he might be a little bit better in rank, but on ladder, there are definitely some maps he can thrive on. Number 6 is one that the people at home are also going to love. It is Mortis. Mortis has an insane hypercharge. I know they've been tweaking him a little bit in the balance changes, but honestly, he is so good right now. Great Mortis can pop off on ladder, and I think he's an option for a lot of drafts. The Chester and Gale nerfs also helped him out quite a bit. The pop-off potential is there, so I think that means that Mortis players should be able to rock and roll. Number 5 is somebody that I think is flying under the radar with casual players, and that's going to be RT. He's easily A tier for me right now as Jackie Jr. and a great sharpshooter. You also get a free super with his gadget rework, which has made him even better. You can play him in KO, bounty, maps like parallel plays. There's a lot of options for RT, so I would be pushing him while you can. Number 4 is somebody that has definitely benefited from these recent balance changes, and that is going to be Buster. No, he didn't necessarily get some big buff, but because of all of his counters like Gale being brought down, he's back in a better spot than ever. Buster has a great kit with a super that reflects projectiles, has a gadget that can pull you in for some goals and get some easy frags, and a ton of high HP. There's just not a lot of weaknesses with Buster, which makes him a perfect candidate for this A tier. And our final A tier brawler is going to be number 3, Max, who's one of the best support brawlers in the entire game. I think Max can sometimes be easy to overlook, but especially after things like LCQ and the Blast Bash, Max is still a real threat and even considered to be in the ban stage sometimes at a pro level. The biggest factor for Max has to be her hypercharge, which powers up teammates with the regular speed she gets from a super and extra super charge. One button can swing an entire game for your team, so if you're a good Max player, you're going to be able to carry your teammates for some big wins. Last but not least, we've got our S tier brawlers, who contain 2 of the top 10 brawlers in the entire game. Number 2 is going to be Byron, who is so good in so many different categories right now. This argument is going to be similar to Buster, where he was already really good, but due to other brawlers at the top getting nerfs, it elevated him back up the tier list. Also, like Buster, he's got a ton of maps and modes where you can push him. Pro players have a particularly high ban rate on him compared to other brawlers, which is a telltale sign that this guy is a problem. And last but not least, the number 1 brawler in the game and the brawler that I would most consider to upgrade or push right now has got to be Mo. He's been nerfed multiple times, but he is so darn good. The damage and supercharge rate went down, but I think he's still more than good enough to be considered S tier. The knockback from his super is tough at times, and I feel like it's really tricky to kill him because right when you think you got him, he can burrow himself underground, go invisible, pop out, and hit you for a ton of damage. All of this makes him really difficult to counter and is a big reason why he is the best brawler in the entire game.